We will look at the process for synthetic division in this video. Make a special note. Synthetic division can only be used to divide a polynomial by a binomial, that means two terms, and the binomial has to be of the form x minus c. So let's take a look at number 1. We're going to divide the polynomial x cubed minus 7x squared plus 5x plus 12 by the binomial x minus 2. Now, let's first compare and make sure we meet the requirements of dividing by a binomial of the form x minus c. So if I compare x minus 2 to x minus c, my c value is actually positive 2. Even though it's x minus 2 in the binomial, we're comparing it to the form x minus c, so the c value is 2. So basically, you could look at it that way, compare it to x minus c, or you can just remember if you see x minus 2 in the binomial, meaning if there is a difference in the binomial, then the c value is actually a positive 2. So you could always remember it that way as well. Okay, now that you've identified your c value, you're ready to set up your organization for your synthetic division. Now remember, synthetic division is kind of like a shortcut for long division. So you're going to see long division in the next video, but you'll notice synthetic division, all you have to focus on are the coefficients, which means the numbers. You kind of actually get to take the variables out of it for a little bit, and it makes the process, I think, a little bit more seamless. And then you can really just focus on the coefficients, and then you can get your final answer. So let's take a look at the process. So first, we want a little bit of vocabulary, though. So the x cubed minus 7x squared plus 5x plus 12, that is called our dividend. And then the binomial we're dividing by is called the divisor. So you get your c value from the divisor, which we already got as 2, and then you set up this half rectangle. And then what you do is you write the coefficients of your dividend in the top row of your rectangle, of your half rectangle. So the coefficients are the numbers in front of the variables being multiplied by the variables. So if I have x cubed, the coefficient is 1 because that's 1x cubed. So my coefficients are 1, negative 7, positive 5, and positive 12. So I line those up in a row in my synthetic division rectangle, basically. So let's just make sure we understand where those numbers came from. So the 1 was the coefficient on the x cubed term. Negative 7 was the coefficient on the x squared. Positive 5 was the coefficient on the x term, or the x to the first term. And 12 was our constant, but technically 12 is the coefficient of an x to the 0 power term, because x to the 0 power is just 1. So 12x to the 0 would just be the constant 12. All right, here we go. We're ready. You start by bringing down your first coefficient. So we're going to bring down the number 1. Then you go to your c value and you multiply. So 2 times 1 is 2, and then you line that up in the column under the next coefficient. And then you vertically add those numbers together. So negative 7 plus 2 gives me negative 5. Then we multiply again. We go back to our c value, and now we're going to multiply by negative 5, and we're going to line up negative 10 in the next vertical column. And then we're going to add 5 plus negative 10, and we get negative 5. Multiply one more time, the c value, 2 times negative 5. Again, we get negative 10. And then we line it up in the next vertical column, and we add, and 12 plus negative 10 is 2. So the last number we get is our remainder. So what that means is the divisor x minus 2 does not factor evenly into the dividend, and that's okay. Sometimes you'll get a remainder of 0, which means it is an even factor, and sometimes you don't get a remainder of 0. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. In this case, we get a remainder of 2. All right, so now let's talk about how we write our answer. So the numbers that we got after we did all our vertical columns, we got a 1, a negative 5, a negative 5, and then a remainder of 2. Those are now the new coefficients of your quotient. Now, your quotient will always be 1 degree less than your original dividend. So our original dividend was degree 3 because we had x to the third power. So we're going to go 1 degree less. So the 1 is the coefficient of now the x squared term because it's 1 degree less. The negative 5 is the coefficient of an x to the first power. And the other negative 5 is the coefficient of x to the 0, which would be the constant negative 5. So let's take a look at how we write our answer. Remember, we're 1 degree less than our dividend. So we have 1x squared, or just x squared, minus 5x to the first, minus the constant 5, but then we have to add in that remainder. Now, when we add our remainder, we write it as plus 2 over our divisor, x minus 2. And that is our final answer. Now, we're going to do the check, and hopefully when we check our work, you'll kind of see the connection of why we write our answer that way and how that is the answer. But the trinomial piece, the x squared minus 5x minus 5, that's the quotient. And then the plus 2 over the x minus 2, that numerator 2 is the remainder. So let's look at the process for checking our work. So to check, we take our quotient, which was x squared minus 5x minus 5, and we're going to multiply it by our divisor, which was the binomial x minus 2, and then we're going to add the remainder of 2. And then if after we do that multiplication and adding the constant 2, if we get our original dividend as an answer, then we know our work is correct, and that's a good feeling, right? So let's start multiplying. So I want to distribute x squared to the x minus 2. So I get x cubed minus 2x squared. Then I'm going to distribute negative 5x. So I'm going to get minus 5x squared plus 10x. Then I'm going to distribute the negative 5, and I'm going to get minus 5x plus 10. And then I add in the remainder of 2. So now what I'm going to do is combine all my like terms. So x cubed is by itself. I combine the x squared terms to get negative 7x squared. Then I combine my x terms to get plus 5x. And then my constants give me plus 12. And I can put a check mark there because look, I have arrived at my original dividend. And because my original dividend was x cubed minus 7x squared plus 5x plus 12, I am confident that my answer is correct because after I check it, I get my original dividend. Okay, let's look at example 2. So let's focus on our divisor, which is x plus 1/2. So we want to compare it to the form of the divisor that we need, which is the binomial x minus c. Now we have x plus 1/2. So to make x plus 1/2 look like x minus c, we actually have to write it as x minus negative 1/2. So now that we have it of the form x minus a constant, I can see that my c value is actually negative 1/2. So you can rewrite it as a subtraction problem, x minus negative 1/2, or remember, if you see x plus 1/2 as your divisor, just know that your c value is the opposite, which would be negative 1/2. Okay, now that we have our c value, we're ready to write our coefficients in our half rectangle for our synthetic division. But this dividend has a little hidden term that we need to consider. So notice how our dividend is the 4th power, or degree 4 polynomial. It's 2x to the 4th plus 9x cubed. But notice how the x squared term is missing. That's because the coefficient of the x squared is 0. But we have to write that 0 as a placeholder when we line up our coefficients using our synthetic division. So I have to put the plus 0x squared in the middle of my dividend to hold the place of the x squared term. Okay, let's use our c value of negative 1/2, draw our half rectangle, and now we're going to list our 5 coefficients, 2, 9, 0, negative 4, and negative 1. Okay, so remember, we start by bringing down the 2, and then we multiply. So negative 1/2 times 2 gives me negative 1, which I put in the next vertical column, and I add 9 plus negative 1 to get 8. Now I'm going to multiply negative 1/2 times 8 for a value of negative 4 in the next column, and I add 0 plus negative 4 for negative 4. Multiply again, negative 1/2 times negative 4 is positive 2, and when I add in the vertical column negative 4 plus 2, I get negative 2. Multiply again, negative 1/2 times negative 2 is positive 1. But now when I add, you'll notice my remainder is 0. So that means the binomial x plus 1/2 is a factor of my dividend with no remainder. Okay, so what does that mean for my answer? Well, that means my answer does not have a remainder. So my answer, or my quotient, is just going to be 2x cubed. Remember, I go 1 degree less than my original dividend. So 2x cubed plus 8x squared minus 4x, and then minus 2 as a constant. So remember, you're always 1 degree lower than what your original dividend was. So my original dividend had a degree 4 because it was x to the 4th power. So the numbers that I got as a result of my synthetic division, those are the coefficients of the quotient, but now the quotient starts with an x to the 3rd power. So the 2, just as a reminder, is the coefficient for x cubed, 8 is the coefficient for x squared, negative 4 is the coefficient for x to the 1st, and negative 2 is the coefficient for x to the 0 power, which becomes the constant. All right, let's check my quotient. 2x cubed plus 8x squared minus 4x minus 2. Multiply that by the divisor of x plus 1/2. And I don't have to add in a remainder this time because my remainder was 0. So I'm going to distribute one term at a time. So I'm going to start by distributing 2x cubed to the binomial x plus 1/2. So I get 2x to the 4th plus 1x cubed. Now let's distribute 8x squared to the binomial x plus 1/2. That's going to give me plus 8x cubed plus 4x squared. Now I'm going to distribute negative 4x to my binomial x plus 1/2. That's going to give me minus 4x squared minus 2x. And now I'm going to distribute negative 2 to the binomial, and I'm going to get minus 2x minus 1. Okay, let's combine like terms. 2x to the 4th does not have another 4th power x to combine with. When I combine the x cubes, I get plus 9x cubed. Notice how the 4x squareds cancel out, which they should, because remember there was 0x squared in my original dividend. And then for my x terms, it's a negative 2x minus 2x. So that gives me negative 4x, and then minus the 1 at the end. And yes, that checks out, and it matches my original dividend. So I am sure that my quotient is correct. 2x cubed plus 8x squared minus 4x minus 2.